everybody. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn Glass in Gowanus, Brooklyn. I'm really excited to be here and to answer your questions today. The piece that Corning will be streaming today was made in October of 2019. I was doing a residency at Corning as a result of winning Blown Away. It was part of the prize package that was awarded to me. I decided to use the opportunity to create a new body of work, and that body of work is based on a theme of car parts. I wanted to also make a piece I couldn't do in my home environment, one that challenged the staff, the incredibly talented staff of CMOG, and one that put their equipment to the limit. And that piece was the car muffler. I almost feel like I'm there. I'm really excited to answer these questions, and I'm very thankful to Corning for having me on that residency, supporting Blown Away and me. And I just hope you all enjoy this. Feel free to send any questions you want.
All right, I just got the word that we are now live online. So welcome to the Corning Museum of Glass, and welcome all of those folks from all over the world that are tuning in to watch this wonderful afternoon with Deborah Czeresko. Let's give them one more round of applause for Deborah. We've got our online folks watching, who knows from where, but we'll pay attention to the questions that you might have online. This is going to be a really exciting afternoon here, and I know I've talked to the crowd here a little bit about what we're doing, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for the folks that are just now tuning in with us. But Deborah's going to be working on a very large-scale muffler this afternoon, and I don't know where her picture went. I think it's probably on the bench there. But we've been working with Deborah on a lot of different car parts here, and so we've been working on, where do we have a camera angle that we can focus in on this? Is that possible? Yeah, so we're going to focus in on the image that we're being inspired by here. So this is the object of the afternoon. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to be focusing on a couple different bubbles coming together to put this large-scale sculpture today. She just told us she wants to max out the glory hole, and so we're going to really be working with a lot of glass this afternoon with the team. So in addition to Deborah, we also have G. Brian Jook here. He's going to help turn pole here at the bench. Chris Rochelle is right now shielding Deborah a little bit. He's also going to be on the team. Jeff Mack over here on the second bench is going to be helping by making some of the parts and components, some of the tubing that is coming together. My name's Helen Tegler, and I'll be narrating and probably jumping in on occasion to help out. So if you have any questions, again, we'll do our best to answer them either online or here in person. And so let us know what we can do to help out. But we're just really excited and honored to have Deborah with us, and this should be a really fun and exciting afternoon. We'll be live streaming here till about 4 o'clock, or really, I guess, however long it takes to make the muffler. We'll see how long it takes. But I'm guessing that time frame will be pretty close to on par. So we've already started to gather up the main body of this muffler. And so that's what Deborah's working with now. A little bit of folded wet newspaper here, and that's going to help her shape this up to be the main body. So it's going to be one big hollow sculpture made with multiple components. I imagine we'll probably gather over this at least one more time to make sure we've got enough glass to make the body. When you're working on a large-scale sculpture like this with different tubes and different objects, it's always finding a balance between getting it to the scale that you want, not making it too heavy that you can't be, it's really unwieldy, but making sure that there's enough thickness for structure. When you put all these different parts together, it's going to start pushing and pulling the weight a little bit different. Pretty much it's never going to be just a on-center object, so we want to make sure we have just enough glass to be able to build this up. Now we do build our glass up layer by layer. It is 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 1150 Celsius, and that is fluid like honey when it's in that furnace. So instead of pulling out all of the glass at once, it's pretty much impossible. We're going to build it up layer by layer by layer, and we let those inside layers cool down just enough to be stable. Now we say hot and cold here in the shop, but generally if you're looking at glass blowers saying, oh, my glass is cold, they're still talking around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you get the glass too cold, it'll actually start to crack. So Jeff and I are working on the flange that will attach these little pipes to the main body of the muffler. It's again where you want to establish the proper thicknesses, make sure you've got enough structure. But G. Brian's going right back into that furnace, gathering that probably last layer of clear glass, letting it drain slightly back into the furnace. Gives you a really nice even gather, and also making sure you leave some of the excess that you don't need in that furnace so that it stays nice and molten. Now we do have stainless steel pipes here. The heat dissipates from them quite steadily, but we want to make sure that the pipe is as cool as possible. If G. Brian can hold the pipe really close to the glass, it'll feel less heavy. So we're just using our pipe cooler there just to make sure that pipe is nice and comfortable. For that radiant heat as well, we also have Chris, being an excellent assistant, shielding Deborah. She is wearing some protective sleeves as well. These are high temperature resistant sleeves for all that radiant heat. And with the newspaper, it is kept wet, but when you have so much glass, it will start to catch that newspaper on fire just a little bit, and it's a new newspaper today. So Chris is also just letting all that smoke be pushed away from Deborah as she's working. So referencing our picture, making sure that the proportions are correct. Jeff is also taking some caliper measurements for this particular piece to make sure that everything will match up eventually. And yeah, we do have lots of things down here that Deborah has made. If you want to come and take a closer look, you're welcome to. We just ask that no one touch any of those items, of course, but you can get a quick closer look. And again, at the end of our live stream here this afternoon, Deborah always loves to meet her public, so you're welcome to come down after our presentation here, after the demonstration, and get a little one-on-one time or group time with Deborah as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the proportions. Do we need more glass or not? Yeah, we do.
Either way. That's going to
Yeah.
be quite a bit wider with one. This doesn't get flashy. That gets flashy.
Which leaves it subject to heat distortion.
So just a little discussion here on how it comes together, the game plan. It's always important to keep everyone on the team abreast of what the game plan is and the process of putting something together. But of course, this is the third muffler that Deborah has made at Corning Museum of Glass with the team, but it's the first one of this version that she's made. So every time you approach new sculptural work, there's a bit of trial and error in figuring out how that's going to take place. Now, she's got about 30 years of glassmaking experience. G. Brian and Chris have got about 20 each. Jeff and myself are going closer to like 25 years apiece. So there's a lot of experience here on the team, and that does make that process a little easier because of all the past experiences, really understanding how the material works. But it's always helpful to have a good game plan. Yeah, that's a good plan, Deborah. She said, we're going to get more glass because we want to make it nice and stable. So the thicker it is, the more stable it is. There's going to be a lot of kind of twisting and torquing on this piece once that big tube section gets attached. So a little bit more glass will make this a little bit more stable. Yeah. He's going to get a running start at it. Go right in. It's always easier if you can keep inertia going with you or keep the ergonomics just a little better. So he likes to have the door open so you can just get a running start right at it. Now this is going to be a strip gather. That's taking the glass and letting it drain off. Yeah, nice gather, G. Let's give G a big round of encouragement, shall we? Yeah, very nice. And really, anytime there's something fun and exciting or you just feel like giving a little love, feel free to give that back throughout the entire afternoon, because if we know you're having fun, it makes our fun just a little bit more so. All right, so that's a lot of glass. This is going to be a big muffler. Sorry, I left you abandoned over here, Jeff. You need me anymore? Okay. Mm-hmm. So once you get all the glass that you need on the end of the iron, then you need to start actually setting up the conditions necessary for getting the shape that you want. Glass in general, of course, when it's hot, it's very easily manipulated. So we can use a little gravity. You can see they're holding it, the back end of the pipe up a little bit, letting the bubble elongate slightly. She's using tools like the folded wet newspaper to compress and shape that glass. And then as it cools, it'll become more stable. So we need to keep it pretty hot in these first few stages just to make sure that we get it moving where we want. And then once it starts to blow out and turn into the shape, then we can start allowing certain areas to cool and stabilize. So you're ultimately creating your forms through the control of temperature. And temperature will vary, and it can vary in the reheating chamber is starting out really hot, but maybe by the end it'll be a little bit cooler. You got that big pipe that's robbing heat away from the glass as you're working as well. And the time it takes as it thins and it gets bigger, thinner glass will heat up and cool down faster than if you're having a thick spot. So a lot of this process of glass making is really dependent on acclimating to the current conditions. There's general rules that you can follow on how to approach glass making, but really it's so many years of experience that really makes it possible, because then you can start to recognize those conditions and acclimate to the conditions. Would you like me to get you some more water there, Deb?
Thanks, Ellen.
Sure thing. Got to keep the glass blowers hydrated. So already starting in a little bit of a jack line there at the top. Eventually this whole piece will need to be broken away from the blowpipe. And shattering glass is not a great way to make it work. So we put in a little crease. Stop. So as this gets bigger and bigger and needing more assistance, I'll be jumping in and out of narration. Stop. All right, so great first cut in there for our jack line. Again, this will be a really nice weakness in the vessel or in the object, and you need that weakness to be able to get the glass to break cleanly. How you doing on your doors, Sergi? Okay. So those of you who are maybe tuning in online, I know last time we checked it was about 170 people tuning in already, which is a great turnout. So thank you so much for tuning in. But we're working here with Deborah Czeresko, the winner of Blown Away. She's the Blown Away champion. And that is a reality series that was aired on Netflix this spring. You can still check it out online if you are a member of Netflix. Hopefully you have some friends that are, somebody that you can have access to that, because it's a really great program. It really focuses on glass blowing, and it's 10 different contestants that each episode they have a different challenge that they have to come up with. Each episode also had a guest judge, so the theme of each episode was a little bit different. But they did a really wonderful job of teaching terminology and seeing all the fun action of the glass blowing process. So those 10 contestants, all one at a time, were eliminated, narrowing it down to just 2 on the final episode. And of course, Deborah came out as the ultimate winner of Blown Away. So we're really excited to have her with us here today for the last portion of her part of the prize package, which is a residency here at the Corning Museum of Glass. And so she's been hard at work for going on a little over 2 weeks now. But during the residency here at Corning, we've been working on different car parts for some future work. This is all brand new work that she has not completed yet, so it's really exciting to be on the front edge of a new series or a new body of work. We're working with a lot of car parts with the mufflers. There's going to be ultimately a big chandelier made with all of these clear mufflers now, but they will be mirrorized eventually, so they'll look very metallic by the time they are installed together. We also have a lot of hubcaps or wheel covers that she's been focusing on, using some really fun molds and techniques to create texture and developing that body of work while she's here. Again, those will all be mirrorized and turned into part of that large-scale sculpture eventually. Hello? Stop low. All right, getting another game plan together, making sure we know the process. She says all we can do is fail, right? So why not? Go for it. Try something new. So we're going to be working on getting some of the components added to this. Eventually, this muffler, this big round bubble, will be kind of flattened slightly to get that kind of classic oval muffler shape. And so with the additions, it's a conversation of whether we put the wraps on first and then smash it flat, or smash it flat, then try to put the wraps on. So there's other possible ways, or there's lots of possible ways of doing it, but without having never made one before. This is all just the years of experience and guesswork, and successes and failures are really aiding in the communication of what that's possible.
So we're going to steer off the bottom, which means potential bone and top and shaping.
Got a weird question on mine? Just got about 175 people watching. Good turnout.
Someone said something hard.
Don't worry about it. People trolling. Well. Tap. Tap. All right, little blowing, little capping, little paddling, and we've got blow again. It's getting quite the wingspan there. Got to really lean out there. It's a tall one. All right, so we got a nice little pressure inside of there, blowing it out nice and square. Combination of capping and blowing. Sometimes when you're shaping up glass, just capping the end of the pipe just keeps air pressure inside of it. If it's pressurized, it'll continue to grow, but if it's just kind of an even pressure, then you can push against it and keep that shape. So we got a really nice squared off bottom now, and I do believe we're going to add a big wrap around the bottom edge of that muffler. It's like the weld, like the flange of where the two metal comes together and pinches to make that nice steel. Yeah, paddle.
Only on the edge, so the bottom stays out
So like that.
at an angle. Very switch. So now our job is to flatten it.
After the wrap. All right, so we're just doing a little bit of stabilization here, waiting on that wrap. Chris is gathering up a couple layers of clear molten glass out of our furnace. Want to make sure we have enough glass to wrap all the way around the end. Jeff's hard at work over here, kind of flying solo, getting everything set up for those 2 tubes. How you doing over here, Jeff? Great. He's feeling a little abandoned over here, but we'll check in with him once in a while. Keeping everybody hydrated. That's an important part of blowing glass, is making sure you're taking care of yourself. You want me to go refill that for you, G? Yeah. It's quiet now, so I'll get that covered up.
So one of the ways I work at home is to make small versions of the enormous thing that I want to make. But we don't have the luxury of doing that here, so we are just using our 150 cumulative years of experience to do some educated guessing on this technique.
It's winging it.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Educated winging it. Educated winging it. Easy for me to say. But yeah, prototyping is always helpful.
I was going to say, if anyone had a question for me, this might be a good time because I'm waiting for the wrap.
Yeah, sure. Any questions in the crowd or online? Yes, sir. Nice and loud. A very popular question.
What was the question?
How do you get the camera in the back of the oven?
Oh, you take that one,
I'll
Helen.
take that one for you, yeah. So that unique view that you're seeing to the inside of that 2,100 degree Fahrenheit furnace is the little teeny window in the very back. That little teeny window is fused silica, which is a specialty high temperature glass that resists almost 4,000 degrees worth of temperature. And so we have a standard camera located behind that, shining through that optically clear high temperature glass. So if you want to learn a little bit more about some of the high temperature glasses that we use for technology, there's a really great display right now in our innovations area about how some of that fancy glass got us to the moon. So if you take a few minutes to check that out while you're with us, there's all kinds of applications for glass. And one of the really wonderful things about glass is that most glass is all made from silica. That's the basic former, is what we call it. And then what you add to that silica gives you different kinds of glasses with different working properties. And so by having a soda lime glass,
Long
which
shears.
is what we're using here, what do you need?
The long shears.
The really long shears?
They were here earlier.
This one's here?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Got to make sure we got our tools all ready. But silica and soda ash limestone, that's the basic concoction that we're working with here. But you tweak those formulas, you tweak those properties, and you can get glass to be applicable for pretty much anything that you want it to. Sure. Oh, okay. We'll ask her that question right after she does this big wrap, because this is going to be a high stress situation here. I'm just going to move this in case we get a little hot glass. All right, so we're going to be adding a big wrap around the end of it. So Deborah's actually straddling the bench, getting out a little further so she can get a good reach. And Chris has got this beautiful wrap all set up.
All right. Ready.
It's shaped very specifically so it touches down very narrow and then will pull off and hopefully be nice and even as it wraps around. Beautiful job. Yeah, the crowd goes wild. That's a real stress moment right there. I'm sure Chris's heart was beating just a little bit, hoping that all went as planned. But that really is a testament to, of course, the experience of the team. Seeing glass look so effortless really does speak to all the experience. And knowing and understanding how that glass is going to move, even moving to a new studio or going and working with a slightly different glass can really change that sense of timing and that setup that's necessary to be able to get the final effect that you want.
Yeah. Even gold. Whatever it takes. We just gotta get this thing.
So we're getting into some critical time here, but we will get to your question online. I know we had one for Deborah, but we don't want to distract her too much for this. But don't worry, we will try to get to all those questions that pop up sometime throughout the process. So really coaxing that rim. Remember, this is kind of the weld where the bottom and the sides of that muffler came together. So it's really a folding of metal. When you're doing a sculpture like this, or really any sculpture, you may not be able to include every specific detail into that piece. And a lot of times it's not necessary to do so. You're really taking the artistic license, but you do need to come up with the basic things that really highlight the object that you're looking for and communicate those basic forms to your viewer. So even though it won't have all the little spots and the welds and all the little components, we'll be able to read this as that flange just with that nice wrap of glass. Ratcheting it up? Up in the ante? Yeah, up in the ante. Well, speaking of complication, and you don't need to answer this right away, but keep this in your back pocket. We've got a question online. They have a question online just wondering what was the most difficult thing about being on the program. Is that what the question was? Yeah, the most difficult challenge that you faced with just being part of that Blown Away program.
Okay, I think I can answer that about now.
Okay. Here, let me grab this.
Okay, the most difficult thing was we were on a 3-day cycle of being incredibly creative, and that was very stressful. So there was a lot of intensity, not just around making the pieces in a studio we weren't familiar with or assistants we weren't familiar with, but the idea was really important. So I'm talking to you. So we got a little bit of time. They gave us the assignment the night before. Depends on how much you want to sleep. You could spend all night on it if you just wanted to go for it. But I gave myself a challenge of doing 3 ideas. So every assignment or challenge they gave us, I then challenged myself to come up with 3 ideas, sort of flesh them out, and then create arguments which was the best one for the show, which one I could execute, which one was like realistic to do. So, I mean, as time went on, it became more intense to keep producing at that level. So that's like at least 10 ideas. But with one challenge, we had the potential of doing 5 things. When it was the pop art challenge, we didn't know which item we would get. They told us what items they were, but they didn't, like I got the toothpaste. But I didn't know I got the toothpaste until I was in the moment. So I had to come up with 5 ideas plus that evening for the 5 different potential objects I would get. That was when I was like, I'm losing it now. I'm losing it. But I used a lot of discipline to get through that. I did a lot of meditation. I made sure I set a curfew for myself to go to bed. I didn't ate healthy and didn't drink any alcohol. And tried to get down to the hotel gym whenever I could. So to keep myself in a sort of positive state, I would say, so that I could deal with the stress that was coming at me. Did I answer that okay? Okay. Did I answer the question? No. Yeah. Love the encouragement. It's nice when someone like claps when you say something. It's so weird when you're like, I just poured my heart out, and no one says it, and everyone's like, whew. So now we're heating this up to create an oval form. That's a good time to answer that question. Thank you.
All right, yeah, keeping yourself in fighting condition. That is definitely the role of a glass artist. All right, so now that we've got our round form with the flange on the end, now it's time to take this away from that perfectly round cylinder and make it look a little bit more like the muffler shape that we're all familiar with. So she's going to be taking some very large-scale corks and pressing this glass to create our flat form. The other big, oh, she's got both of them. I only saw one of them. I thought maybe we didn't have them both. All right, so she's got these big cork pads. And these cork paddles, they're just standard cork. They're put on wood handles so you can hold them comfortably. She's gotten them a little bit wet to create that thin layer of steam between the working tool and the glass. But in general, as long as you keep those moving, they're not going to leave any texture or design on the vessel or the object. So we really love these as glass shaping tools. Now I do need to cap the end of it, making sure that the whole thing doesn't collapse as she's squishing. So Chris is helping by keeping a thumb over the back end, and G. Brian has got it all stable for her to shape. Oh, looks great, Jeff. Okay. All right, so beautiful first flatten there. Meanwhile, Jeff Mack over here on the second bench has finished both of the tubes that will be added to this piece eventually. We're putting them away into our garage here, and the garage is a really great babysitter, essentially. We can put things in here that have been made, and it'll keep them safe, warm, happy, and hot while we're off doing other things. And when we're ready to start assembling these parts onto the main project, then we can just kind of warm them back up, pick them up, and start to attach them. If you were to leave glass out on its own, it would take moments before it started to crack. We also have a really fancy turning machine here in our garage. This will keep the pipes rotating to make sure that nothing gets too off center as we're working. These corks really are invaluable in helping shape the glass. Even if you just use wood paddles, those could leave a little bit more marks on the surface, but these corks seem to not leave much markings at all. And when you've got such a beautiful form, and eventually, again, this is going to be mirrorized, so all that mirroring solution will take all these little marks on the surface and really amplify them. So we want to have this nice and concise and clean as possible.
Yeah, so he said he's about a 1/4 inch wider for each one.
Got a lot of calipers out. This is also really important to be able to get a piece assembled. When you're working on multiple components, it's hard to keep an eye on everything at once, so using calipers, of course, makes that process a little bit easier. Especially if you start to work in production or something of that nature, your gathering becomes more consistent. You can end up having things gathering the same amount, having the same process, but these one-offs are also very difficult to keep straight. All right, so garage babysitting job complete. How's it going over here, Jab? This is looking fantastic.
It's going good. I mean, one of the hard parts of this project is getting all the proportions right.
Absolutely, that's so important to make it look right.
And figuring out how much glass to use to get those proportions. So that's what I'm like thinking about a lot out here.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're lining up some of these parts. We did have a question in the audience, and we'll have to probably wait a little while to get Deborah to answer this as well once she gets this figured out. But just some curiosities about why she's using all of the car parts as part of her new process and inspiration. So we'll definitely get her on the mic eventually to get some of those answers to the questions. Is there any other questions that I might be able to answer? Yes. Yeah, so I guess my understanding of your question is if you start out, all pieces start with a round bubble of glass, a glob of glass. So are there different processes or procedures to get to different shapes using that same bubble? That's exactly the hardest part of glass making. Yes, so there are different setups. So once you've stretched glass really far one way, it doesn't like to kind of shrink back up or fold together nicely. So you have to know what you are making, the very beginning stages of that early gob of glass, like you said. So a standard bubble can be, you can throw the bubble all the way to the tip, or you can leave it up towards the top. So even just how you establish that first starter bubble will already put you a few steps ahead on what the next part or next shape will be for that object. So absolutely, you definitely need to know where you want to keep your thicknesses, where you're going to be heading next, where you want to put your heat, and know what sequence of events to get to that final effect that you want, because it's very difficult to backtrack in glassmaking. There's little things that you can do to adjust as you go along, and honestly, there's constant adjustments that you're probably not noticing because they're not as evident to the regular viewer. But the whole time we're working, we're reading that glass and only can understand where it's going because we've seen it go there a million times before. So yes, you have to set up very specific conditions to get those final effects. And that's what gets so tricky about developing new work, because you have a foundation of understanding of how glass works. You have a foundation or a theory in how you want to make those things happen. But a lot of times you'll put something together and then you realize, oh, maybe I should have gone and waited on that step, or I should have done this other step first, and you kind of adjust as you go along and you learn from that step. And I heard earlier today when they were talking about the next process, a big jump forward was just changing the punty, the way that it was attached to the pipe later on. Because you can end up having a big thing that's attached at one spot, that's a lot of wiggle. You get something that's attached at 2 spots, then it's going to pivot. You can put things with 3 spots, then it's going to create stability, but you might not have 3 spots. So it's kind of structuring the glass in certain shapes to get certain understandings, and sometimes you just learn that through doing and through that experience. Now, we also are in a really wonderful age, and obviously we are on the internet right now, so we're in a wonderful age of glassmaking that it is becoming a very small community due to the availability of information. So if I want to learn how to do a process or a technique, chances are I could put it into that YouTube search or that Google search, or come to the Corning Museum of Glass website and find a bunch of references of other people who have done these similar things. And I could learn a lot more than when even I started blowing glass about 25 years ago. You know, it was all the VHS tapes, and maybe somebody would take a really bad video of one demo, and then I had to get my hands on that tape and borrow it from somebody, and it was mostly just heads and the backs of people, you know. So it really is pretty amazing for a lot of contemporary glass workers and young glass workers building up in the ranks. I feel like the learning curve is getting smaller and smaller because of all this access to information. And we're really excited and proud to be really a part of that here at the Corning Museum of Glass, because it's probably one of the most extensive collections of information, not only because of our Raquel library and all the research that you can do while you're here, but just those online resources. You can pretty much search our entire collection online. You can, again, look at the YouTube channel, find tons of visiting artists and lectures and demos and things. And even a lot of our own team have done a lot of demos throughout the years as well. So we've got a lot of resources to look to when making work. That's one of the fun and exciting parts of being on the team here at the museum as well, is that we do have our classic shows, our daily demonstrations, kind of our bread and butter of the museum, get you excited about glass and glass making, and of course the make your own across the street that also gives you an opportunity to try it for yourself and take classes and workshops. But we bring in so many people, Deborah being our current example of very talented artists from all over the world that come and get to work with our team, but we also get to work with them. So we get to get our limits pushed and experiences, horizons broadened, and we get to try to troubleshoot some of this really complicated form. A lot of times when an artist comes to us, it may be something that they could make on their own, but maybe it's something that they wouldn't be able to make on their own without this facility, without this team, without the time and energy available to them to be able to push those limits. So very often we get a lot of big, heavy stuff by request by a lot of the visiting artists, but sometimes it's just a really fun process that needs to be worked out in the example. Awesome.
Yeah, it is.
What do you mean?
It's not bad. I mean, that one, this one is better.
getting a little bit of comparison, looking at the first piece that they made, kind of learning from some of those steps, and then being able to focus on the next and how those have adjusted. Now, as they're waiting on the next step of this process, it's also really important not to let anything get too cold. So Chris is stepping in with some torching, making sure that everything's staying warm, especially as we get longer and longer and longer. As you go to reheat, of course, whatever goes in first is really hot, and it's also the last thing to come out. So the tips of these things generally stay hotter than the areas by the pipe. So as you start to extend beyond the end of the pipe, it's harder and harder to keep those temperatures balanced. So you get a lot more torch working involved in that process. Other questions that you might have out there so far? No? Yeah, you got one? I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you. I'll come a little closer. It's a lot of noise up here with all the fans and everything. Yes. Yeah, so the thickness of the glass, does it depend on the amount that we have, or does it depend on the kind of glass that we're working with? Great question. So if in general, it depends on the amount of glass that we get and how much we blow it up, basically. So if you get all kinds of glasses, they get molten, they get soft, so you can introduce air bubbles into them. And if you take a small amount of glass and blow it really big, it's going to be really thin. But then structurally, maybe you couldn't reheat it without it collapsing under its own weight when it gets hot. So you have to find that balance of taking that certain amount of glass to blow up to a certain thickness to stay structural. So that was part of the guessing game at the beginning of this process. Well, should we take one more gather? Should we not take one more gather? Do we have enough? Do we need extra to make sure that we keep it within those thicknesses or those tolerances that we want? But the kind of glass doesn't necessarily influence the size or the thickness, but different types of glasses will react differently to heat. So it could influence the process a little bit on how those thicknesses are accomplished and how far you can push that particular material to do the things you want. Yeah, great question. Are we going for the attachment here, Jeff? So she's taken a little bit of chalk and marked along the bottom edge of this piece, and that's just a good reference point. In the heat of the excitement of getting these kinds of things put together, it's really important to make sure you've got all your game plan put together, and having a visual reference can really help. I don't know how many times, I'm sure all of us can attest to these moments of exciting, pivotal moments where you end up putting something on and you're like, oh, I just put the hand upside down or whatever. You know, you have to kind of give yourself as many cheats as possible, reference points as possible, to try to make it all go smoothly. So the lip of this piece has been heated up so that it is nice and hot. You need two hot glass to get to stick together. It really mashes it on. And when you push, it compresses. When you pull, it's going to stretch. So getting a nice little stretch on there. Beautiful job. Whew. And this is where it all of a sudden goes from being something that was relatively on-center to now it's going to be continually off-center. So just the torque involved in turning this piece evenly will take that extra few moments. All right, We even got the double torches here today. These two fluffy torches, what we call them, they're just propane torches. They're hot, but they're not really getting it to molten kind of hot. They're only just going to be maintaining the temperature, getting it a little bit closer to a molten temperature. If we want to get it really molten, we can switch over to that red handle torch, which is, of course, just super hot, about 4,000 degrees. So I do believe that the end of this is going to be reshaped as well. This is the visual part of the muffler that we see on the back end of the car, those two pipes that come out. There will be two of those added. So we're just going to take some time to really shape that up. And this hot torch is really convenient for that because the hot torch is a focused heat. So we can get it really, really hot only on the end. Otherwise, if Chris spends his time reheating just in that reheating chamber, look at that view that we've got. We're already maxing out the size of our hole there. But when we get all in, that means everything's getting hot. Things can start shifting around and manipulating. So using those torches to help focus in some concentrated heat is really helpful for getting the good shape. Use some graphite jacks. Just trying to square off that far end. This is where it gets kind of tricky. It's not an even Steven kind of thing. It's not round on the end, so you're kind of hula hooping around with this piece. You kind of got to feel it and move with it to get it nice and round. So Deborah's going to be here with us for a couple more days. So if you are watching online and you're fairly local, you want to come visit, she will be making more work on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And that'll bring us to the end of her prize package residency. Doesn't mean that we won't have her back at some point, but we want to make sure that if you're wanting to come visit Deborah, see her working in action here at the museum. That is Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Now, she is in Brooklyn. She does a lot of work there as well, so you probably could follow her Instagram, DCZEEY, and she'll let people know when she's up and about and around. Yeah, you're really getting into the posts. You're on the radar. You can't escape. But as she was saying earlier, having a competition show like this and bringing her name to the forefront of activity, it is only going to propel her forward with her own energies into that. There's only so much that the fame of the show will bring, and it really does take that hard work of the follow-up to come make the dreams come true that you want. So she's really working hard to capitalize on all these great opportunities that have come her way and all this fame. And so as exciting as it is, she wants to make sure that she's meeting all the folks and getting to know everybody. We've had a lot of people come here to the museum that has said, oh, I saw Blown Away. It really gave me an inspiration to check out this glass blowing thing. And really wanted to come and see glass making and, of course, see Deborah as well. But I've been hearing that from a lot of studios around the country and even around the world, that putting this into the forefront, having it on Netflix, getting people excited, reaching new public about glassmaking. It really, we're starting to see new classes develop and new programming around the world on getting public access to glass blowing, which is pretty exciting, I think. It is It seems like such a big world, but there's really not that many glass blowers out there. So it's really exciting to be able to share this wonderful craft that we all love, this art medium that we all work in. And we do have lots of classes. We're coming up on our winter scheduling here at the museum. We're at the studio of the Corning Museum of Glass. I know the deadlines for residencies and things are coming up. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about glass, taking your first or 10th glass class, we've got lots of opportunities here at the museum and at the studio to be involved. All right, looks like we've already got our first one all complete and coming in on the second pipe here. Jeff's been warming that back up. After sitting in the garage, it stayed safe, warm, happy, stable in that garage. But there's always a risk when you're working with those things. When you're heating and cooling glass, things can thermally expand and contract. So he's got a keen eye on keeping those warm while they were sitting there, but also the slow reheat, making sure that it's being brought to the proper temperature, and then focusing heat just on the lip of that piece. We want it to contact together and meld together strongly. Two pieces of hot glass melted together are pretty much one piece of glass. But if the temperature is different between those two, it can set up a weakness. That's how our punty process works. We put a very delicate and temporary connection together with the glass, and then that is influencing, hopefully, getting it to break cleanly at the end. He's also put in that jack line, that constriction line at the top of that muffler tube, making sure that it stays narrowed down. Nice little weakness. And the heat involved in the connection also is stretched out a little bit. But beautiful job, beautiful execution for the team. Very nice. And she goes right back in with that torch to give it a little love to make sure it's re-softening and establishing that next step. So a couple more caliper measurements. Now that we have the tube stuck to this, now it's going to be time, I believe, to punty this up. And so this is where some of the process gets a little tricky, trying to transfer this over onto a punty. I love this inside view we're getting of this reheating chamber here. Again, specialized glass in the very back that allows us to see this inside action. But it's already looks like it's touching back the back of the furnace almost. So I don't know how we're going to get this other tube on there. It'll be a short tube, yeah. Oh, okay.
Gee, did you want a bigger iron than this, or Chris, you guys? Do you want the long one, or is this good? It's the same as this. You want the same one, or do you want the bigger one? Okay.
Little discussion on the pipes. When you're sizing up on transferring from one iron to the other and getting things attached to another punty, you want to have the pipes themselves become part of the weight of the piece, but also becomes part of the strength of the piece. So you want to have appropriately sized pipes that can handle the weight of the piece, but also just, they said, well, do you want one a little bit longer, a little fatter on the back end, the counterbalance? Those things help in the perceived weight that we're dealing with. Because once you start going past center, it makes things heavier and heavier and heavier. So it looks like Jeff is grabbing another pipe that's just a little bit more solid.
You got plenty of time, Deb.
So we were just talking a little bit about the structure of this piece and these big long tubes that we've added. And they are a little bit longer than what the final piece will be. But once this piece is finished and off this iron, there's actually a lot of work that goes into the post-production of it. So those tubes will be cut at an angle, getting that kind of angle that you'll see on the bottom of the car. That will be a lot easier to do cold working than trying to trim and squish and get things done hot. It'll also be attached to a punty, so that will end up needing to be trimmed away and cold worked as well. And again, all of these pieces, whether they be the wheel covers, the hubcaps, or these muffler, all these car parts will eventually get mirrorized on the surface, the inside as well. So they'll be very metallic, very shiny, and these will all come together as a big chandelier eventually. Good?
So I never answered the question. Remember there was a question?
Yeah, there was a question about why you're using so many car parts.
Oh.
What's the...
Well, in general, I'm mining the metaphorical power of the everyday object. What is this object? It's an exhaust on a car. But it really reminds me, and I'm influenced by this artist extensively. You may have heard of Duchamp. One of his most famous pieces was called The Large Glass. And the large glass contained something called malic molds, in addition to the brides. If you ever see these malic molds of Duchamp's, these very much look like those malic molds. But in addition, well, gonna take a break here.
Bride stripped bare by her bachelor. Please. Even.
So if anybody didn't know, Duchamp is pretty much the person who invented the ready-made. You might know his piece, which is a urinal that he put in an art show in New York City in it was either 20 or 30, 1919, I think. Wait. Yeah. So these are unready-mades.
Her phone is blowing up. It can wait, Deborah. It can wait. Your phone's getting blown away. Ooh, sorry. All right, so trying to get that nice little curve in the ends of these, making it nice and straight. Once these shapes are established, we're not going to end up changing anything on the back end of this muffler or the bottom of this muffler. So we need to make sure all the parts are just right before moving on to punting it up and transferring it over another direction.
That one looks like it's going out a little far. Bring that one over. Usually I have eyes in the back of my head. I can tell this stuff.
It's looking good.
Can we go that direction?
So wood is being used to help shape this glass now. This is a kind of a inert thing that's not going to end up.
Is that where you want them? Like just towards the neck and oil a little bit. Let those set up then.
You got that?
So a little heat maintenance, letting those tubes settle in just a little bit. Make sure that they're not going to get too hot.
That's why I left those really set so they don't.
Yeah. Even just centrifugal force of turning this in the reheating chamber will get those tubes to wing out if they're not just the right temperature. So Chris, is, in all of his years of experience, is giving, he's really calling the shots on some of the timing of this.
You want to flare them out a little bit? Is that what you said?
Yes. Wait, see, I might have made it a little too close.
Okay.
Anyway, it's an unready made.
An
Back on the
unready
mic.
made.
Back on the mic. See, the less I do out here, the better, so I can focus on important things like answering questions and where the final film
This
lies.
is the important things, for sure. We'll get to the questions. We got some time at the end as well. Again, we'll be able to chat with Deborah. And if there's something that doesn't get answered on now, maybe coming and chatting with her or contacting her on social media, stuff like that can also answer some of those questions. But we've got a lot of interviews with Deborah talking about her residency and things. So a little more resources there available online through our website that you can maybe get some of those questions answered that you're curious about. But Deborah is working a lot with these everyday objects, really trying to find the beauty in the everyday objects and the things that maybe you don't think about as so much. For example, the potato series and seeing that simple beauty in the forgotten potato in the drawer. Potential beauty in all of this. I'm going to misquote your art statement. Don't want to misrepresent you. Because why does it look like legs? Because there's two of them. That's a fun thing that a lot of these kind of sculptures, as they're coming together, they're going to look like a lot of different things. Torture. Got it, G? All right, so a little bit of ash that was put onto the piece from the use of that paddle. That easily just brushes off and gives us a nice smooth surface. If that stuff was left on the surface, it could eventually get stuck permanently, and we wouldn't want to have that in the final piece. So Jeff is working on the punty over there on the far end of the stage that we're seeing online right now. This will be a really unusual shaped punty. Trying to search for the stability that we need and the connections. You could.
Don't forget, these pieces will be silvered at the end when they're finished.
Yeah.
So it's gonna look like a
so
mirror.
metallic-y and shiny. It's gonna be awesome.
So that's part of the concept too, that you see yourself. It's like a reflection.
Oh, okay.
What that means, you could figure that out.
And I didn't quite catch. Okay, I was gonna say we're not doing anything. Just hang here. Are the chandelier going to be just mufflers and just hubcaps, or is it going to be both together?
I think that there'll be two separate pieces.
Okay.
Or these might be individual pieces, like wall
Yeah.
sconces. One fan suggested that the hubcaps become an automobile
I love that.
instead of a
Automobiles.
chandelier.
Yes,
no.
some mixed reviews
Whoa,
on the
mixed
crowd
reviews.
there.
It's too tongue-in-cheek, isn't it?
I don't know. It depends on how bold you want to go with campy. You know, like
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to own it. I love that kind of stuff.
I think it's a direction. I don't know. That's not what I'm doing, but
Well, only you can answer those questions.
I like the idea
I like the idea too.
that someone was thinking that hard about it. So
You might need to just make one for yourself, if nothing else. Featured object in your house. This is my automobile. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're just like that. Yeah. So really just doing a lot of heat maintenance at this point, waiting for that punty. Got the thickness on this really nice and even, Deborah. Looks great.
So I just got a text message about Duchamp
Yeah?
from a person
From a
in
person?
Belgium.
For what?
A person in Belgium who studied a lot of art history, but she spelled urinal wrong. Duchamp stole the urinal from a female artist who died. Her name was Armut. Ha!
Ha.
Just like, what's this? Well, there's others out there. I didn't know that. Did you know it? Oh, nothing's safe.
Nothing's safe. Art history. It's a lot of history out there to
She had
keep
a
track of.
pseudonym, Armut. She died, and he said he made it.
So he stole her
But
work?
one of the most iconic art pieces is done by a woman. See, this is like,
That's the kind of stuff, the global community coming together with information,
well, I knew this person.
learning something new. Oh, there you go.
Thank goodness. I was like, I got to check this. Did someone die? I know. Like, this is like the 5th text message.
So is this punty going to be kind of like that other part that it's got a curve and 2 openings that are attached? Are we kind of attaching this? I haven't seen crimp the middle of it. Just a little discussion to make sure we're not going to end up sealing this at any point. If you have objects that are sealed shut, the air trapped inside wants to expand and contract with heat and cooling, and so it can end up causing stress and cracks to form, or you can end up having the glass actually change shape as it tries to heat and expand and blow out on the areas that are soft. So anytime you're making any kind of form that's going to be closed off, you want to add at least a little bit of a hole or an escape. But once we transfer this over onto the other side, you're not going to end up having that.
So a lot of the objects I choose because of their. I like think about the gendering of objects a lot, the gendering of occupations, and that's one of the things I'm thinking about with the meat chandelier, with the hubcaps, with the exhaust. So I try to bring a lot of humor into the work too. So those are some of the ideas I think about when conceiving these works. The issues I think about. And for me, I try to have a personal, start with the personal, but that then expands into a more public, like a broader idea.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of one of those difficult things as an artist, is trying to, one, find your own voice in a medium that's so full of historical context, and really taking the everyday and taking all these recognizable processes and trying to make them your own. You got it? Okay. So we're getting real close to being able to transfer this over onto the punty. So Jeff has this very unusual shaped punty, all complete. We got to make sure that the connections are about the same size and have that nice contact point. But ultimately, the contact point is also usually on a punty meant to be very delicate and temporary. But you might notice that by the pipe itself, they've actually narrowed down kind of the bottom edge of that U. And so we're not going to separate it at this punty to piece. We're actually going to separate it from pipe to punty. So that way we can cold work off all of that excess, keep this as a nice solid foundation, because we have a few more components to add too. So we want to make sure that it's a nice stable punty that can withstand the torque and the weight. When a piece is so heavy, even just trying to turn it over can be enough torque to make a punty kind of want to crack. So you really want to have these insurance policies, nice fat connections. It's always a good thing. Need help, Chris? You got it?
Go side to side and see if it's centered. And I'll flip. Hold on. Okay.
Can we torch the top still? Yep. Getting some nice stability. We want to make sure it's contacted well, but also make sure that it's set up enough that it's not going to be moving around a lot on G. Bryan once we catch it. You want me to get in?
No, I'm getting. I had an injury, everybody.
Deborah, unfortunately, suffered a pretty serious broken ankle earlier in the season, and so she's still a little bit on the recovery. So here we go, a little bit of water. There we go, beautiful job. Very nice, Jeff, just catching that a little bit. We do have a bonker. I don't know where we didn't bring it out for you.
I'm a bonker person, as you can tell.
So even making a big smack on that piece, if you do it too hard, it can end up having different vibrations. So a lot of people will use big chunks of wood. It's a little softer of a tap to get that connected. All right, so now we've got this turned around the other way. And I believe we're going to need to close that down pretty tightly because when we do the transfer the other way, we still have this big long pipe to attach to the far end. This is where it's going to get real interesting, right? So we're going to continue to maintain the temperature in the entire object and start developing that large tube.
We got to put the wrap on the top too.
Wrap on the top, yep, that second wrap that matches the original wrap that we had on the bottom.
And over-exaggerated weld.
Over-exaggerated weld. I think with all the clear glass, that's the kind of route you need to go. You need to push those details a little further to make them a little bit more prominent. Yeah. Especially once the mirrorizing happens, there'll be a lot of reflective things happening. So those fat wraps will be a really nice
This is an artist's interpretation of the thing.
An artist's interpretation of the
that thing.
That's what we do, right? We don't necessarily copy exactly. We've got to extrapolate and do our artistic version of a thing. And sometimes that takes pushing those limits. Okay, so Jeff's going to start working on the tube. Chris is going to start working on the bit.
Probably only straight.
Yeah, but then I bend it on there.
Bend on the thing. Okay. And this has to be. Oh wait, no. Just gonna round it.
Yeah, she's going to keep it round and then flatten it, right? Fix that crack? Sure thing. All right, so focusing a lot of heat on that top edge. From here on out, there's going to be a lot of torching, a lot of heat maintenance, a lot of back and forth, really trying to put everything together. If you're tuning in for the first time here online, or of course if you've come into the theater wondering what the world is going on in here, we've got Deborah Czeresko with us here today. Yeah, winner of Blown Away Netflix series.
Thank you.
Definitely want to check that out if you have not binge watched it. It's a quick one and a good one. And the more people that watch, the more potential we have for future seasons of this program. But no, we don't know whether they're doing a second season or not. And we probably won't know until you know. So no need to ask. We don't know.
Yeah, this residency is part of the hashtag $60,000 prize package. But I want to say, I don't think I would try to make this piece in too many places. So this is like really giving me opportunity to make pieces I wouldn't be able to make in my average everyday studio, average everyday glass blowing studio. Yeah,
we are really spoiled here. We've got a really fantastic studio with a lot of really nice equipment. You ready?
There they are. Someone bring that in.
So they're going to use this really nice heat that G. Brian got to help shape up the opening of this piece. A lot of times when you're blowing glass, you're the one holding the pipe and you're turning and you're using the tools. So as soon as you start bringing it into a situation where one person is turning, another person is using a tool, and you got two people using a tool, There's a lot of coordination involved in that. That gets pretty tricky. Now, G. Brian's been a gaffer for about 20 years, so he works a lot with visiting artists and makes a lot of work of his own, working with other people. So he's well versed in what it takes to turn a pipe properly, get the timing, and can coordinate with another artist like this. Good. Come behind you there, Deb. Okay. Good.
I guess so. Yeah, it's going to take a minute.
It's a little heavy, I will say. It's a little heavy. Yeah.
Starting the wrap.
Yeah. Chris is starting the wrap. Jeff is starting your tube. And we got you here at the bench. We got you here at the... A lot of parts. Just like a car, a lot of parts.
Yeah, you're right.
Now you also notice that Deb's being really smart about thinking about the next step. She's getting her tools out. She's getting everything prepared. There's precious seconds. And we don't want to have to pick this up any more times than we need to, so we want to try to get as much efficiency as possible, not only for our sake, but also the sake of the glass. As you're working, it's getting colder and colder to a certain extent, so you don't want to waste any time if you can avoid it in getting ready with things to go. Now, G. Brian has also put some gloves on, and that's one of our more popular questions from the audience is why, as glassworkers, we don't wear gloves more often. Generally, with standard glass blowing, there's a lot of dexterity that's needed to work with glass. And if you end up having gloves on, it makes it very difficult to turn the pipe. But when you start scaling up on something like this, you want to make sure that you're keeping everything turning properly, and this is a very off-center piece as well, so the torque needed to turn that pipe is a little bit different. So G. Brian's actually put on some kind of those golf gloves or baseball gloves, and they got leather palms. They're kind of grippy, and they can really help in grabbing hold of that pipe, being able to, yeah. Good? Hot stuff.
Make sure it stays
So we're just kind of in a holding pattern at this point. We want to get that wrap on, and it's a little easier to make a wrap around a round thing and then flatten it than it would be to wrap around an unusual shape. So Chris is gathering up a couple layers of clear molten glass. This will be that second weld on the very tip of this piece. Good. There we go. Thanks. It. Oops, sorry. Thought I had it, and then I didn't. All right. So Chris has even narrowed down the cut, making a nice point on that wrap. We want it to contact really small, and then stretch around the whole thing, and then trail off at the end. So by getting a nice tight contact point, then we can have a little bit thinner of a spot. Ready?
Are we ready? Okay.
What do you think? Yep. Got to get the timing just right to make sure that all goes well on a wrap like this. So we want to make sure that the piece isn't moving around. If it starts to sag as we're trying to wrap it around and things, hitting a moving target is not as easy. Okay. All right, lining it right up. The speed of the turn, the heat of the glass. Beautiful. Let's give him a big round of applause. Nicely laid upon wrap. You still got some tweaking to do on that form. Want to trim away the little excess? Go from underneath. There we go. I'll just even out that little bit of irregularity. And now when all that gets pushed into place, it'll be good to go. Narrate to the piece. I'm trying. I keep getting distracted. There's so many awesome things happening here. It's hard to keep up with the narration. You guys doing all right? Everybody enjoying themselves out there? Woo! All right. And how many people do we got tuning in online right now? 250. Wow, we got a lot of people tuning in from all over the world probably. So thank you so much for tuning in here with the Corning Museum of Glass and Deborah Czeresko, the winner of Blown Away. This is the final week of her prize package residency that came as part of the winning package. This, as she says, the hashtag $60,000 winning prize package.
Live stream.
Yeah, live streaming. Got to get the hair all put in it. Get good images, good pictures.
What I learned from Blown Away is that you want to look good on camera.
Said what she learned from Blown Away is you want to look good on camera. That's a hard thing to do as a glass blower. It's usually hot and sweaty, and it's not our most attractive angles generally. I know when the first couple episodes were filmed for that Blown Away series, the studio had been established, but had not been established with good ventilation. So they ended up having very hot temperatures, dangerously hot temperatures for the first few episodes. And so part of that process of learning about the process of glass blowing was also the production, really learning what you needed for glass blowers here. So they put in new ventilation, and everybody had a little bit more comfortable time after the first couple episodes.
So
Good?
last time we had to demuffle top
All right, sounds like we got some muffin topping to do. So as the glass gets hot, it starts to move. As we're spinning it, it wings away from center. It starts to ball up. Glass, when it gets hot, wants to really ball up. And so she says, I want to make sure that we're not muffin topping before we get the final squish on this form to match that beautiful oval that she's already established on the back end of the piece. So G. Brian's doing a great job here getting just the heats we need to make the changes that need to be made, but he has to be really conscientious about even the speed in which he turns, because if he gets really excited and starts spinning really quickly, that's where the muffin top starts coming in to play. Okay. Good? I was going to say that would be some pretty good wingspan you got there, Deborah. So working inside of the bench, working outside of the bench, when you get large-scale pieces like this with such length on them, sometimes the bench really becomes nothing more than a support structure, and the gaffer really needs to work outside the bench. She can get a better angle at it that way as well. Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty warm.
I didn't want to just go for it in case the outer surface had frozen.
Yeah, good call. All right, so now we're going to get those big corks back out again and match that oval shape. Again, we are making a muffler here today, but we did actually have Deborah here a month or so ago, and we made another big muffler. And we've got that up on our YouTube channel, I believe, so you can watch the first version. No need to cap, huh? Good. I don't think there's any air in there. So obviously making a big complicated piece like this does take a lot of people. That's one of the joys of coming to a residency here, is she's got access to the team. And really the original production for Blown Away, part of the excitement of that final episode is the inclusion of our glass blowing team from the Corning Museum of Glass. Also, Eric Meek is the guest judge for that final episode, but most of the contestants throughout the process of that competition show got some very skilled assistants from the Sheridan College up in Canada, but they only had one assistant for each episode. And in the final episode, with a more complicated process of creating an immersive experience, creating an entire gallery space full of work, we were able to go up and give 3 people for each teammate or each contestant. So our team from Corning, Chris, G. Brian, myself, Catherine, Tom, George Kennard, we all were able to come up and help on that final episode. So even just having more hands to open doors and help facilitate makes a process like this a lot easier. If you're in the area and would like to see some more items from that Blown Away show, yeah, I just want to get in her face here. you want to see some of the items actually made on that show, we do have some wonderful display cases set up here in the amphitheater, the Corning Museum of Glass. One piece from every contestant on the show. We also have 2 cases set up in the other side of the amphitheater that highlights a few of the objects from those very complicated immersive experiences that the 2 artists put together for that final competition.
So, I think we should torch that area just behind the wrap and then let that go out with gravity.
Okay.
So just a mild heat now.
Yeah, we're getting an awful close view to the back of that reheating chamber there. That's one of the more entertaining things I think that we have for that focus is in the very back of that reheating chamber is a small window made of fused silica glass, and it gives us a very unique view to all the action in that very hot hole. That fused silica window has a temperature resistance of nearly 4,000 degrees, so the 2,100 degree Fahrenheit furnace is no match, of course, to melt that glass. So we get that really fun view. And when we get in sculptures and working on very complicated pieces, especially when they get really close to that window, you can get some really entertaining ideas. So the team over on the far end is working on that long tube section. This will be the final length of tube that we need for our piece. You ready, Dee? And obviously this is a very long piece of glass on a very long piece of glass. So we're going to start to max out our capabilities of what can be added or what can be heated, really. So you want to make sure that you've got just the right heat. Your air hose right here. Good bench maintenance here. She's getting rid of all the water that accumulates on the bench rail. We don't want one little drop of... We're going over it? So we're making the discovery that, of course, we are maxing out the size of our reheating chamber. So once we attach this, we may need to immediately put it back away into our annealing oven. Glass needs to stay hot and evenly hot throughout the entire working process, and then also cool down very slowly under controlled conditions. Yeah, that'd be great, Carl. Thank you. Carl stepping in to assist with some torching. We good? So agile. Well, you haven't let that broken ankle slow you down too much this round. The first time that Deborah was able to come visit with us and have the first part of her residency, unfortunately with a broken ankle, she was pretty much locked down to the bench. So we had to do all the running around. She couldn't do all the finesse work herself, which as an artist is really frustrating to not have access to the piece, not be able to really direct what you want. But hopefully she was happy with the results with our team and helping her out making stuff. We try to make it as easy on her as possible, but you always want to get that direct contact with the material.
It's very dignified, Helen. Thank you. I was temporarily disabled.
Yeah. A surfing accident, get a major broken ankle in June, I believe it was. June. And with that, had 2 surgeries, a bunch of titanium pins. So she says she's only flesh and bone, but now she's flesh, bone, and titanium. Yeah. So first step into the pursuit of Ornamentation. What do you got here? Ready? Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that door was so closed. So you're seeing right now the tube being made on the other bench there, Jeff Mack gaffing this large-scale tube. We even got Lewis stepping in, Eric Meek as well, bringing out all the big guns to help you out, Deb. Got the full team here.
Oh,
Full
Helen, we
team.
need help. It's got, like, in the beginning it seems really easy, right? But then it like ratchets up how complicated it is. So if this was our challenge on Blown Away, we'd get one chance, right? This is it.
What do you need? Okay.
Well, we only got one shot now, too. Supposedly it's over at 4. We got 13 minutes.
So we do want to also remind everyone, you definitely don't want to miss out the final moments of this piece, but we do have a really wonderful collection of items up in the New Glass Now exhibition, which also includes one of Deborah's meat chandeliers. So if you'd like to take a closer look at some of her work, good? There's a really wonderful piece in that New Glass Now exhibition. And that's right up above you here in the contemporary wing of our museum, the newest part of our museum, the extension. What you need? Oh. So we're trying to locate some additional torches, kind of planning ahead, knowing that we're already getting a little too tall, so we're going to need to get a lot of torches involved. Yeah. Go up and down that way, it won't pivot as much. Yeah, are they bending that before or after we attach it? Can we just bend it before? Ah, it's the artistic version. It's the artistic license.
We don't have a 6-foot-long glory hole, unfortunately.
Yeah. We good? Call Fred Metz. Fred, we need another 6 feet added to our furnace here.
Yeah. I think we're in the holding pattern here.
Who's getting dressed up for this? Okay. Yeah.
When this comes out, yes. We're still in the hole.
All right, bringing over our final part. Towards the hole, nice. So we can use gravity to even help compress that together. It's already got a lot of great movement on it. So that's helping really solidify those connections. But we don't want to end up having anything too wiggly. A little bit of water on that connection. Light little tap, very nicely done. Yeah, let's give them up for the team. That's a really good move. Beautifully executed. Now it's pretty much just a race against time. Gonna be, all right. Did it get any heavier? You know what? I think it already felt heavy enough. That little bit didn't seem to add much. Yeah, there we go. Some reflective heat from the doors. The doors themselves have a lot of heat built into them. So just angle them toward the piece. It also gets a lot of good radiant heat coming right at that. So even without a torch, we can still do a little bit of heat, but ultimately it's going to be a quick movement to get this shaped up and off the iron, because as you can see, we can't go all the way in, and those torches can only take you so far. Yeah. So you might got a little dirt on the end. I think this is probably the longest piece we've done here. So Eric's getting all dressed up in some high temperature gear, our silver suit. We have our annealing oven already up at 905 degrees Fahrenheit. This muffler will cool down really slowly over the next couple days. All those complicated angles and parts and thickness differences really sets up some tricky annealing challenges. I'm doing a lot of dancing over the yolks. I'm all right.
I'll just open this up. We're not going to do the bend.
No bend, keeping it straight.
Keep it straight.
Again, this is really just the first part of this piece. Once you get the actual object made, there's a lot of cold working, finishing, mirrorizing, and then, of course, the installation into the final presentation, which will either be a chandelier part or a sconce, she said. Maybe working on a new series. This is a brand new series that Deborah has developed while she's been with us here. You good? We got a lot of heat. So it's really exciting to be a part of a brand new series of work, and as Deborah has described, it's probably a series of work that she wouldn't be able to do. Oop, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to work it while you bring it over.
All I heard was okay. I wasn't watching your wrong okay. Multitasking here. But a piece like this, as you can see, a big team assembled to make it happen. So not a kind of series that could be done just anywhere. Good? All right, coming on our last few heats here. Want to give a few shout outs to the team here. Brad on the camera work, he's giving me all the wonderful actions. I think we also have Kayla upstairs. I'm not sure. I think give them a big round of applause for our team here. Amanda working on those online. And of course we've got G. Brian holding the pipe here, Chris Rochelle, Jeff Mack. My name's Helen. We got lots of people coming together here on extra. Eric's getting ready to put this piece away. And of course, the most important member of our team, we got Deborah Czeresko here with us here today. Yeah. We would not be here doing what we're doing without her, so it's really exciting to have her as heading up our team here today. Keep an eye on our social media. We'll be posting pictures of the final product here and checking out her social media, DCZEEY. She'll be posting pictures of the final product once it's been cold worked, assembled, and put together an amazing piece. If you're in the Chicago area, she'll also be attending the SOFA Chicago show here at the end of the month. You gonna bend it? Okay. So it's been decided to give it a little bend. So really focusing the heat where we want to make that bend. I also want to thank all of our viewers tuning in from all over the world. I know the last check we had over 250 people tuning in. That's really exciting to have such an open window to the rest of the world and to help share what we do and what we love here at the museum. We do hope to invite you all and have you all come in person at some point. And we do have Deborah here with us for 2 more days. So if you want to come and see Deborah live, we'll be working with her and the team for the next couple of days. You ready? Also, to remind everybody that Deborah does love to talk to the public. So when we're finished here today, give her a chance to get a little water and decompress slightly, but we'll have an opportunity for you folks to say hi to Deborah. She loves to meet the public and find out where you're from and talk to you just briefly. It's been a nice long day, but she's always very generous to give us a few minutes at the end to say hello and get those social media pics you can tag her on. Yeah. What's that? I'm all right. We're good. Thanks. Get my workout today. At least 10 or 15 pounds. Yeah, at least. I think the blowpipe's 10 or 15 pounds. Well, G's got the leverage on the back, so he's making it feel less heavy for me.
So, G. Brian,
I'll give it a little heat before you do it, Deb.
towards the knife blade, not towards the spatula end. You know what that?
Bending it towards the knife blade, not the spatula end. Thought we were working on a muffler here. This is part of the challenge of working with a team where you're handling one end and the gaffer is working on another end, is the communication. Now, a lot of times with vessel making, you'll end up having a lot of body part references, like the shoulder of the piece, the neck of the piece, the foot of the piece, the waist or the belly of the piece. But when you start making large-scale sculptures, So I got a little backfire in that muffler there. Nice. That was a well-executed bend.
I want to see it's in line. Let it sag with the thing going down, Chief.
So using a little gravity. All right, going in on a couple final flashes. Even got Rob stepping in here to help with the doors, bringing out all the high ups of the organization to help out in this exciting moment. Thanks for stepping in, Rob. Ready?
So it's moving a lot. But towards the duck line, it'll boil the water.
Funny, because you think that's the furthest in is the coldest right now.
One more flash. One more flash. Yeah, we gotta get the team in order. Final flash.
It's moving around a lot, Brian.
All right, Lewis and Steve are all prepped to open the door here. All hands on deck. Get on it. We're really just waiting for it to stop moving, looking at the movement of the glass. We don't want it to slump in the oven. Eric's got all of his gear on, ready to catch. Flat. Turn it so it's flat. There we go. There we go. Woo! Deborah Czeresko, everyone. Amazing. Amazing piece. And 5 minutes of bonus show online. All right, let's give it up one more time for the team. Great job. Very exciting afternoon here in the Hot Shop. We do hope you enjoyed it here in-house and online. If you have any further questions, I'd say just give her a few minutes to get some water and settle down.